Fall is here, and you know what that means. Crisp autumn breezes, beautiful red leaves, and of course, dressing up for Halloween. So, in this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how I made my Enoch from Over the Garden Wall costume. I get a big kick out of wearing this costume, so I hope you're going to enjoy this tutorial. So the first thing we need to do is make paper mache, because that's how I constructed the head. For my paper mache recipe, I use liquid starch, Elmer's glue, all-purpose flour, and water. To make liquid starch, you combine 1/4 cup of cold water with 1/4 cup of cornstarch. After that is mixed, you then add in 2 cups of boiling water and mix together. Then to make paper mache, you mix 1 cup of Elmer's with 1 cup of liquid starch, 6 cups of white flour, and then 7 cups, more or less, of room temperature water. I didn't film myself making the head, so I'm just going to demonstrate what I did on a smaller scale. For the actual head, I used double-bagged giant trash bags filled with just like newspaper, old bed sheets, and fabric scraps. I also used thick rope to tie the trash bags and not yarn. After you have your bag all tied up, now you just need to paper mache. Just make sure that you use ripped segments of newspaper and not cut. The little frayed edges are what helps make the paper mache strong. So this is what the plastic bags look like after only 2 coats of paper mache. And for my Enoch costume, I did about 9 layers total. And you want to let each layer dry completely for a day in between, because that's going to help make it nice and strong. And then obviously, once you're done with your giant version, you're going to just cut a hole out of the bottom. It's always good to cut a little bit smaller than you think it's going to be, because you can always cut more. And then you're just going to pull out the fabric scraps or newspaper or whatever you had inside. So I'm just going to run through and show you what I did to put the final touches on my Enoch paper mache head. To paint him, I primarily used paint samples. I just like paint samples because it's latex paint, so it's nice and thick and durable. And also, these are only about $3 to $4 each, and it's a nice way to get a good amount of a custom mixed color. This particular brand is just Valspar, for no real reason in particular. But to do all these little details, I just used whatever acrylic paint I had laying around, so just like those cheap little tubes you get from Michael's. But you know, it is nice to invest in maybe slightly nicer acrylics, because then you just have to do less coats because the paint's higher quality. And then after you're done painting, you're just going to want to spray it with a clear matte finishing spray, and that's just going to help protect the paint. So I'll take you to the inside. So on the inside, you could see where I cut the holes for the eyes. I layered a bunch of tulle, and I just hot glued gunned that down. These silver lines are the fairy lights I bought. They just have a little battery pack that I got these, I think, from CVS. They weren't too expensive, and I made a little place for them to sit, just a little battery pack out of craft foam. Also, to keep the lights in place, I made these little foam tabs, so I would glue down one end, thread the fairy light through, and then glue down the other end. And I did that throughout the whole inside of the mask where I wanted the lights to be. That way I wouldn't have to glue the lights to the paper mache head. You can see all the layers of newspaper, and this is like the remnant of the trash bag that was used to make up part of the stem. So now I'm going to explain how I make the metal cage that sits on my shoulders to make this costume over like 6.5 foot tall. So here you'll see that the head actually comes off pretty easy. For these, I used tomato cages. So this is a pretty big tomato cage. I bought it from Home Depot because it was the only size they had. This is actually from a no-face costume. no face just kind of like drapes over it like a dress, so that's why this is curved. And this is a much smaller tomato cage, and I actually think it works better, but they didn't have that size, so I'll explain about that later. But this is the part of the tomato cage that would go into the ground. So I just bent them, and it actually gives my Enoch head a really nice place to rest on, because that way I don't have to glue it on or anything. It actually stays in place really well. On the inside, you will see that I have all these little foam pieces. I just have them tied on because this rests on my shoulders, so I just want to make sure it was nice and comfy. And this, the back of my head rests against that, and that just helps keep the costume forward. Also, so I can see out of it, there is a big patch of burlap here. It's actually the same burlap as the tendrils, but I just painted it just with some acrylic paint to make it darker so it wouldn't be too noticeable. Also, when you're cutting out these burlap tendrils, you just want to make sure that you swipe the edges, just paint the edges with some, just some white glue so that way it does not fray. And you can see the light come through, so that's how I see. So I'm just gonna explain how I made this using my no face one, because you can see that one better. I just curved it, the circular part of the tomato cage I just curved so that way it sits on my shoulders. For this one, this is like an old sweater that I just took and I cut the sleeves off because I was never gonna wear this sweater again, and tied it so my shoulders would be a little bit comfier. This part, this is where my forehead goes, so I just like haphazardly attached this to it so my head wouldn't be resting against like semi-rusty metal. So that's it for the tutorial. I hope you liked it. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Tumblr for more cosplay stuff. And I'm really tired. I'm gonna go eat some soup now. I hope you guys like this video, because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to editing and filming.